So Ashish, congratulations on scoring a 750. When was this? This was 11th November that I see the date now.
Yeah, yeah.
So how does it feel?
Well, I couldn't believe it when I saw the score, and I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my wife that I was taking the exam. I just said I'm going to my office to take a mock test. I didn't want the pressure to build up, so I
Okay.
just booked the date and went and gave the exam. And I couldn't believe the score when I saw it. So I checked it 10 times when I was driving back home, and I
So
was like,
what
"Is
were
this
you
really my
expecting?
score?" I don't know. When I wrote the test, verbal kept on getting difficult, and I thought I won't be able to score more than 660, 70. So I was surprised to see it. I
Okay.
was confident in the quant part because quant is my strong part, as is with most of the Indians. But verbal, I wasn't very sure with the difficulty level kept on increasing.
Well, when the difficulty level keeps on increasing, that's when you can be more and more sure you're going to do well. It's
Yeah,
only, and this is the nature of the test. Only when the difficulty level goes down, that's when you have to worry.
yeah.
So,
But
so
yeah,
that's
it was a great experience. Taking the test in such a way, because last time when I took it, everybody knew I was going to take test, but this time nobody knew except me that I'm taking a test.
I can imagine that. And when I looked at your score reports, you've taken the test. This was the third attempt, if I understand correctly, right?
Well, this is fourth.
This was your fourth attempt. Okay. I saw one cancelled on the score report that you sent me, the one which had 680 on it. So this is your fourth attempt. Wow. So this, yeah, I
Yeah.
can definitely understand the pressure.
So honestly, I took last test in October. Again, not telling anybody. I took it at
So you took the
2 p.m.
first
So
attempt in October of 2016, is what you're saying?
no. I took the first attempt in December of 2016.
Oh, that's a 17 December one. Okay.
Yeah. And the
Okay.
second one was in January.
Yes, I
So
had the
both of
second one
them
in
I
January.
scored 680. And
Mm.
then I dropped the preparation. I applied in a couple of colleges, a couple of universities, but I didn't get in. I got to the interview in ISB, but
Okay.
I didn't get in any other university. And I didn't want to target any of the low rank university.
Okay.
So I dropped it at the time, and then I continued with my work. And then after 2 or 3 months of working, I thought I need to start it again.
Mhm.
And then I felt that I went wrong somewhere, because when I started preparing with the previous institute that I joined, and when I completed the course, I didn't feel much different, except that they taught some tricks how to solve problems in verbal. And if this is a particular kind of test, you have to eliminate certain things which GMAT doesn't appreciate, or the GMAT doesn't like. This is not the way the answer would be. But it was not so much about understanding the meaning. When I came across e-GMAT, I saw the difference between their approach and this approach, and I really enjoyed. Once I started preparing e-GMAT, it was just I took one mock session, free
Mhm.
session, and I liked the video session. And then I said, just go ahead and apply for this, course.
Okay.
And I joined the course, and I really thoroughly enjoyed the course. I feel like something is blank now after I wrote my GMAT, and there's nothing else more than writing application, which is much more tedious job than preparing for GMAT.
Well, we'll talk about that piece, but I will tell you this. Writing the applications is just as interesting as taking the test. And we'll talk about the logical aspect of it once we get to it. But it may seem tedious to you now, because I think the way you're approaching this is way, if I were to infer what you just said, how you approach the GMAT in your first or second attempt where you were applying tricks. This is kind of what you're trying to do. You're trying to figure out a trick, which is not
Yeah.
the way to go about it. But let's talk about your approach. And I'm particularly interested in, um, so you said you joined a coaching institute and in your second attempt or so when you got a verbal score of 31. And so now you have a verbal score of 40. So what was your difference in let's say how you approach sentence correction and your second attempt versus your current attempt when you got a V40?
So yeah, so I think when I joined that institute, their approach was read first few words of first sentence, I mean the underlined portion, and last few words of underlined portion where the error lies, and then you try to identify the differences between different sentences and try to identify the error over there. And That was the approach that I learned. I didn't know any better. What is the
So
better
you're
way of doing
working
it?
like a robot, trying to identify the
Yeah,
differences in answer choices.
yeah. So it, I mean, it felt okay that time because I didn't know what is the right approach. So that was the approach that I learned, and I didn't see significant, score with that particular approach. So I said, there's something going wrong, and I need to correct it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when I started, applying the concept of e-GMAT, I know it was difficult in the beginning when your mindset is already tuned in a particular way, and you have to detune it and then put it in different way. It's an effort. So it took some time, but once I started preparing with e-GMAT, after a particular point of time, I started getting more and more questions correctly, and then I got the
What was
confidence.
your approach then, let's say, with sentence correction?
So when I started, applying the approach of reading and understanding the sentence, things became much more clear, right? It's sometimes it's just when you read it and it doesn't make sense, right? It's as simple as that. You don't even have to know the grammar for it when you
Yes.
understand the meaning of it. So it was much more easier to identify the errors with that approach once you start reading the sentence. And I'm not saying that every time you read it you'll understand it very well. Sometimes you have hard words, you won't understand it, but you understand the gist of it.
That's
And
true.
that's what made the difference. When you start understanding the sentences, it's easier to identify the errors, and when you start identifying the errors in the beginning, it's easier to identify the right choice. You know what you're looking for, instead of just reading all the answer choices and trying to figure out what should be the right choice.
And
So
it's not just that, it's also the fact that the confidence that gives you, say, hey, now I understand the meaning. I understand why certain other choices are wrong. And I
yeah,
think that's a reinforcement that is very important when you are in a testing environment.
yeah, that's true. I mean, my confidence level boost up, and I think this test is not so much about how much you know what is the right choice. It is equally to do with your confidence level and how your nerve is in the exam, and that plays a vital role. You might be scoring 750 or 760 in the mock test, but when you go sit in the actual exam, the pressure is much higher. So that makes a significant difference.
And that is also in business. I mean, you can be an excellent student, you can really know the top notch strategies that are out there, but to be able to lead in an environment where you're putting a stake in the ground, you're betting on things, and yet stay focused to apply those strategies that you've learned, that's something which defines success in business too. So I mean, the test in that regards is mimics the kind of mindset that you need to succeed.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I
So
think same is with the critical reasoning. Once you start reading and trying to understand it more, rather than start reading the answer choice straight away. Because if you do that, you still end up going to the, your RC question, your critical reasoning question again, up and down, and that kind of takes a lot of time. So I think reading and understanding, just it's a simple phenomena, simple step, but it's difficult to apply because it requires a change of mindset, especially if you have prepared in the past.
that's the point. Yes, it's a very different mindset from focusing on where you spend 80% of your time on the answer choices to really say, I'm going to spend 40, 45, 50% of my time on reading the prompt without looking at the answer choices. And it's that mindset, it's that willingness to give up,
Yeah,
and change the method, that is the most critical thing.
yeah. And I really think that kind of paid off with the score that I got. I wasn't expecting it, but I did get this. So
Well, that's good.
definitely.
Now let's talk about data and analytics. So, how many mock tests did you take this time?
Uh, so before the actual exam, I took 2 or 3 mock tests. I
Okay.
tried I tried third attempt in between in October, where I was just taking test after test after test, and then one day I had the slot available, and I just booked it and I went to take the test. I think I was drained enough to be able to do justice to the GMAT, because I took test in like 5 tests in 5 days, and the 6th day I took GMAT.
Yeah, that's not
So
good.
I didn't score well, and I just canceled the score. I said probably I just need to relax and take a step back. I've completed the course. I need to let my mind relax, do some meditation probably. And to be honest, from that point onward, for next 10, 15 days, I didn't do much of a preparation. I just trying to ease my mind. I said, I'll take the test, but I'll take it when I feel at ease. I'm
But
not
you
going to
still
prepare
felt
much.
confident about yourself. You said this is not what I should get.
Yeah. I knew that something is terribly wrong with what I got, and it's not correct. The only thing that was missing was I kind of drained myself, and I needed to relax. So I decided to relax during Diwali, holidays. I went home and just enjoyed over there. I would still do some quant question because I enjoy quant. I
Mhm.
never prepared for quant. It's all from
Mhm.
college and my.
You are from Indian School of Mines, so you have a good.
I mean, quant is something that I was never worried about. Every time I took mock, I completed almost all the GMAT club mock, and out of almost 10 or 15, hardly in one or two I got 50, but remaining I got 51. So I was more confident about quant. I was not worried about it, but people
One
were
of the
there.
things which is something that we it's interesting that you talk about this. Krishna and I don't know if you know Krishna, he's a subject matter
Mhm.
expert.
Yeah, yeah,
So we
yeah. I
were
think I attended some sessions with him.
okay. So we were discussing about conducting a quant session versus conducting a verbal session, and I was saying, hey Krishna, conducting a quant session is just so much less work. Why? Because the answer is a definitive yes or no. You
Yeah,
know this is the right answer, and
yeah,
whereas in a verbal session there's a lot more preparation required. And he's like, yeah, that's true. um,
yeah,
for a quant session, the amount of preparation required isn't as much. Why? Because when you're preparing for a verbal session, it's you just don't need to prepare for okay, what's the right answer and what's not. It's also about what what are the three, four other correct answers that could be there for this particular question. Um,
yeah,
explaining why each particular answer choice is wrong to a student of various who's coming from different angles, and
yeah.
just all of that requires a lot more training. I mean, a typical
I
preparation, I
agree.
mean, for a session that I've already conducted 30, 40 times, for me is about, for a verbal session is about 2 hours. For a quant session, for the same session is about 25, 30 minutes or so.
Wow. Now, that makes sense. That makes complete sense. But I think once I started preparing and, I started getting more confident about knowing the meaning. Verbal, although it sounds it's difficult, and it is difficult. I mean, for most of the Indians, who are preparing over here, quant comes much more easily than verbal section. But one thing that I noticed was even in some of the verbal section in the actual test, I didn't have to look at all the options
Oh yeah.
because I knew this is the correct answer.
No,
So I
what
was
you're
like,
talking about is answering questions, which is easy for us. What I'm talking about
yeah,
is teaching verbal is a lot more work.
that's true. That's true.
Yes.
I can understand that. And that kind of pays off, right?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, you have so many successful examples, and I feel lucky to be part of e-GMAT family, to prepare and learn the right approach rather than, learning the tricks.
And the
It's not,
beauty of this is, I mean, when you learn verbal this way, it pays off in many ways. It's not just about the GMAT, which is, I think, an amazing return on investment, but also, when I read contracts,
Mhm.
it's the same language as the GMAT.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
really and you can really look at it and really say what's written over there. And one of the things that I read a lot about is the H-1B regulations that are coming up,
Mhm.
and I can really see what they mean and how they could be applied in various contexts because of the fact that of the critical reasoning and the reading comprehension aspect of GMAT.
yeah,
It's just expanding that piece.
yeah.
So let's
So
talk about data. Did you use Scholaranium at all during your preparation?
I think I finished most of it.
You finished
All the
most of it.
sentence correction I finished. I think on critical reasoning I had 5 or 10 odd questions remaining, but I finished majority of them.
Okay.
Uh, and then critical reasoning is what I was talking about. And reading comprehension, I think I still had around 4 or 5 essays left, but I finished majority of
On the
Scholaranium.
passages, okay. So
Yeah,
what
yeah.
role did Scholaranium play in your overall preparation?
Well, I mean, you learn concepts, right? And then that's what the whole theory is all about. But that's not really an application, unless until you apply it and you practice it,
Mm.
you cannot reach there. And that's true. I mean, once you solve the problem with the theory, it's easy because you know that this is the particular concept that is applied
And you've
in the
just
practice
learned that
test
thing.
over there. Yeah. So this is the thing that you're going to apply right here. But in Scholaranium, everything is mixed, right? So you don't know what you have to apply, and you have to think what you learned. So that makes a whole difference. And then you can time it, right? So when you time it, you know that you have a limitation of time, and how do you best read it? How do you optimize your speed? How do you optimize your time? That all comes live when you start preparing and practicing on Scholaranium. So it played a vital role. I think in the beginning it was very tough. It just kind of I couldn't get past more than 50 or 60% efficiency, or accuracy, as we call it.
Ability.
But, ability, yeah. As I progress, I kind of realized, that kind of time is shortening, and then I could improve just by practicing over there. So that makes a difference. When you start seeing the results, you start believing it.
Okay. Did you look at the solutions in Scholaranium too?
Oh yes, I did look at the Scholaranium solutions. I think that when I was preparing, one thing that I learned was, and I kind of went through different blogs on GMAT Club as well as other forums, how to improve your verbal. And one key factor was, it's not about how many questions you do; it's about how you learn from your mistakes, and how you avoid making the similar mistakes again. You can make new mistakes, but learn from it and don't make that again, right? And that's what you need to learn. It's not about how many questions you do. It's all about how you learn from those questions that you attempt. And the same approach is there in Scholaranium. There are questions and there are solutions. But if you ignore the solution, then I don't think Scholaranium is much use. If you just keep on practicing and don't look at why the wrong questions are wrong, and what the wrong answers are wrong, and why the right answer is right, then I don't think Scholaranium will be helpful for anybody.
Well, then no quizzing platform would be helpful for any. I mean, it would be helpful in the sense that you would get an estimate of where you stand, and you won't spend $250 taking the test because it's telling you you're not ready.
Yeah.
But and that's one, and I'm glad you did that, frankly, because we spend a lot of time creating solutions, and you hopefully can see the amount of detail which is there in the solutions out there. Typically, for example, it takes us about 40 to 45 minutes to create a critical reasoning or a sentence correction question. It takes us about another hour and a half to write the solution for that question down. No. And then it takes usually 2 review cycles before it gets published in Scholaranium. So, I mean, creating a question is about 3 to 4 hours worth of total team effort. And then you need at least 2 SMEs to vouch for it. Ideally, we would want the creator and then 2 other experts to really say, okay, we agree with the question and then the explanation that you've provided.
Yeah. And I think even the discussions are really good. Sometimes, you read the solution and you think, something is missing. I'm not clear. And then you go to the discussion, then most of your doubts are cleared over there, because whatever you're thinking has been thought by somebody else, and it's being asked over there, and it's being answered already. So, it's not just even the solution, even though the discussions are sometimes interesting.
I am glad. And I think I'm hearing more and more people say this, and it makes me so happy. Why? Because the forum architecture that we have built in is something that we specifically built. We decided we're not going to buy. So there are forum components that you can buy from other places and attach to it. We said, no, we want it to be question specific. And you see that more and more in Scholaranium. And so the fact that it's question specific allows you to really go down and say, it's going to be relevant to what I'm talking about. And there's another specific upgrade to Scholaranium. I don't know if it's been put in production yet or now, but we tested it internally and we QA'd it, where the explanations can be categorized now by answer choices. So you can really say, I had a doubt in choice D. Show me all the questions that were pertaining to choice D and the answers over there.
Yeah, it's already there. It's already there.
So again, it's just these days I focus on so many things that I am not really sure if that was productionized or not.
Yeah, and one other thing that I was less confident about was reading comprehension. When I wouldn't say I was less confident, but I would take much more time in reading comprehension. And I started applying the e-GMAT trick of reading and understanding the passage. And then I was taking much more time still. So I said, this is not working. Probably something is not right. And I said, probably I need to read it. I need to understand it, but I don't need to remember everything that I'm reading. I need to just understand the flow of the passage.
Of it, yes.
Yeah. So I think after my third attempt, that's what I focused on, specifically on verbal. I focused on because I kind of realized no matter how much time you take to read it, when you read the question, you end up going to the passage. Now the question is whether you know where to find the information on the passage is probably more helpful. So if you know the flow of the passage, if you know what the message is being conveyed in the passage, and you understand there are negative points, there are positive points, there are comparison. If you know that much idea of the passage, you know when the question is asked where to look for the information, and it's much more easier. But if you try to understand and try to remember it, then it takes much more time. You don't have to remember. I think that's the key is you don't try to remember everything.
It's about getting the, what I call as the architecture of the passage.
Yeah.
Overall, to really say, how does the author going about various paragraphs in the passage, what is he trying to, what's the role of each paragraph? And that's why we call them paragraph summaries. If you make those summaries well, life becomes a lot easier. So yeah.
I think in the beginning I tried to make the summaries on piece of paper, but I ended up spending more time writing it. So I kind of started making memories in my brain, and that kind of works better for me now. At least I know that I improved in past 3 or 4 weeks, just trying to make mind notes and working through it. I know it's kind of, for some people it works better when they write it. For me, it kind of worked better when I just.
It just depends on what gets registered in your brain.
Yeah.
And a lot of it depends on how you've been doing things.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
For example, for Payal, she likes to type things on the computer and then work off it. I like to write. I mean, I have pieces of paper lying all over. Even though I have your entire summary that's sent to me, I still like to write it all down, because that's when I remember it in my brain. It's about how your brain works.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But that kind of made the difference. Last few weeks, I just worked on the reading comprehension part. I was confident about critical reasoning and sentence correction. The only thing that was taking much more time was reading comprehension. To be honest, towards the end of the test, I had like 5 or 6 minutes remaining, and I still had 6 or 7 questions to go. So I think I kind of guessed last 4 or 5 questions as well, just to meet up the time requirement. So I was still surprised, because when I guessed last 4 or 5 questions just to complete the test, I wasn't expecting.
We just
40.
had a student who guessed through one RC in the end and scored a V42.
Wow. Okay.
He got a 740 with a Q50 V40. And this was about, I think, 10 days back is when he posted his success story on GMAT Club. And he guessed that entire last RC just because he was short on time. In fact, he knew he was going to be short on time, because he had done that math based on the tuck time and Scholaranium. So, and he said, I'm going to just guess the last RC. That's what I'm going to do. That was his strategy going into the test. And he knew even when he guesses the last RC, because he's doing so well on SC and CR and all the other 3 RCs that are presented to him, he's going to do really well on the test. And he did well. I mean, 740 is a very good score.
Yeah, I agree. I think when I was in last 20-25 minutes, I knew I'm going to be short of at least 5 or 6 questions. I won't be able to attempt them. And I said, it's okay. Let's just focus on marking the right answers at this point of time. And if you have to guess last 5 or 6 questions, let it be. But don't try to rush right now. Don't try to let your brain get worked up about it, because the moment you let that go, you're gonna mess up this.
The moment you lose that focus is when GMAT takes over, and you're gone then.
Yeah. So when I had 6 minutes remaining, I last thing, when I had 6 minutes remaining, I had the passage, an RC passage, and I had like 7 or 8 questions, and I said whether I should read this RC or I should just skip and look for a sentence correction RC and critical reasoning. I said, let's just read the RC. It's been presented. Let's try to read it as fast as possible and try to answer as many questions as you can. So,
had you done the other way, you probably would have done slightly better.
I guess so.
Because sentence correction and critical reasoning are your strengths. Had you randomly marked 3 questions in RC or 4 questions, you probably would have still gotten 1 correct.
Yeah.
And then you would have gotten all the SC and CR correct too. So it'll be interesting to get that ESR though.
Yeah.
To really see what was your accuracy in the last block. So if you get a chance, get that. So let's talk about where you want to go next.
Wow, that's the most difficult part, right?
It's not difficult. You have a great platform that you want to build on. So let's talk about what's next for you.
So honestly, when I thought about it, and that's kind of where when I'm doing a lot of research, I'm finding that a lot of people struggle is finding their career goal. Honestly, I want to work with strategy consultancy, but one thing that I realized
is the oil and gas sector, right?
Yeah, oil and gas sector consultancy. engineering consultancy is what I was talking about. So I want to work over there. How do I build up from what I have done in past it'll be close to 9 years when I start the my college, whichever university I get admitted in. So it'll be close to 9 years. Next July I'll be completing 9 years of work over here.
Okay.
So I don't know if kind of, looking at different blogs, it kind of scares me when people say, 32 is probably reaching your limit. It's difficult to get into good schools at 32, 33. And I was like, I feel young. I don't know why people talk about age.
Not really. So is that your primary fear?
That's one. And the second is, I'm still trying, although I said I want to work as a part of, engineering consultancy, I'm still trying to find that goal. And that's a bigger fear than the
What's
age.
what's the problem with the goal? Tell me again.
I'm not sure whether that's going to connect with my current profile.
Why not? Your current profile is doing projects, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, there's a lot more than projects. I've done projects is actually probably the last thing that I've been doing.
okay.
I've done. So when this organization started in India, that's when I started with this organization in 2009. And then, we built up the groups. I went over there, convinced the people over there to set up a group over here. I set up my own group over here. Then I set up the lab to do the qualification testing. I identified some areas where there is an area of collaboration and set up a manufacturing unit over here. So I worked on that plan. Unfortunately, oil and gas went down, and the plan, although it was finalized and we got all the things approved, but was put on hold. And then I was moved to a particular group where I had to manage the group because people were not happy. So it was more of a people management rather than project management. Gave the direction to the group.
It's always people management. Remember this.
Yeah.
And right now I am managing people and projects, but it's primarily people management because people do the work now. For a lot of it, and then to make sure that they're motivated to do work and they're coached enough to do work. It's always people.
Yeah. So I agree. So that's my background. I mean, I find myself to be technically strong, and then people management I'm still learning. And I mean, my HR says I'm good, but I'm still learning. Is what that's how I'll put at it.
And you're always going to learn in both technical aspects as well as the managerial or the leadership aspects of it. I think so. So here is how I look at it. And maybe you can tell me what you see as the risk or the worrying part. You have extensive background in solving engineering and management problems, as you've demonstrated in your resume. Starting from starting this particular company's practice in India to doing a bunch of things, and including managing people, or rather training people in Houston as well, right? And I said, led the SEALs group in India, and the only other location after Houston, and essentially, so you have this background in solving engineering problems and implementing projects, and implementing not just projects but even functions, and in the right domain. So when you think about your career goal, and when a B school looks at it and really says, hey, is this person capable of doing what he's capable of doing? I think you've already demonstrated that you're capable of doing that. So I don't see that risk that you're talking about. So maybe you can elaborate what that risk is that you see.
Yeah, I think it's more to do with, I think I should stop doing a lot of research on stuff where people get dinged. I think it's the more negative you read, the more negative your mind becomes.
I will tell you what I wrote in my B school. Okay, it says I was a researcher prior to joining my MBA in 2004, and I worked for Nokia, the cell phone company, and I did futuristic research for them. And kind of research that I did was implemented. And we're talking about 2001 to 2003. The kind of work that I did was productized into phones in 2013. Okay. So that's kind of my background. Now, my goal was to implement a company similar to e-GMAT, not in the GMAT domain, but in the engineering domain, which helps tier 2 B schools in India become much more competitive. Because one of the problems that I really see in India, tier two engineering colleges, sorry, not B schools, one of the problems that I really see is in tier two engineering colleges in India, people who enter are pretty confident, but the professors aren't as competent. And because of this, when the people who graduate aren't as competent, it's a huge problem today. We see that with the unemployment. Now think about my background as a hardcore wireless researcher and trying to do this.
Yeah.
And now think about your background and trying to do what you're trying to do. It's about staying focused. It's about really saying, it's about knowing the market that you want to go after, understanding the problem that you want to solve. Right? Think about it. Elon Musk didn't know anything about cars or rockets or anything. He came from PayPal, a payments company. But he knew the problem that he wanted to solve. So
True.
Okay. So now that hopefully that part is more clear, let's talk about where you want to go.
I don't want to, last choice that I want to study is in India. I work with a global organization. I was in US for quite some time.
I can see that.
And then I felt like, I want to work in a school where I get more global perspective, get to make more contacts, and could work in a global environment. So I'm kind of two ways between. So my first preference so far, now it's kind of became the number one ranked college. So that's kind of becomes more difficult. But NCR is where I would want to apply. Although kind of consultancy is their domain. Why NCR? I feel first the duration is small. It's a 10 months course, and they do have. They do have good oil and gas connections as well.
They do.
Although majority of them do go in consultancy, 40% of them. But you can do consultancy for oil and gas as well.
Okay, that makes sense. So you haven't looked at schools which are more traditional oil and gas business schools such as McCombs, or if you want to go to UK, Imperial College or Aberdeen.
No, I've not looked at them.
Yes.
Not yet. I'm trying to research on those schools, but I'm not finding the names. Today I started doing that. So it's just been 6 days, right? And I've been reading about.
So if you want to look at schools which are very closely tied to industry, Imperial College is really closely tied. Aberdeen in UK, which is, by the way, a very cold place. I don't know if you've ever been to Aberdeen.
No, I've not been to that place.
People don't like living there. I once went there so I worked for Honeywell, and I was associated with the oil and gas sector, and I went north of Aberdeen. Aberdeen is north of, I would say, north of UK. Is northern Scotland, if you can believe that. It's like saying southern Antarctica, essentially. It's a very cold place, but there's a lot of exploration in Aberdeen and the areas around it. So the school over there is very, very well connected with that. Okay. Similarly, you've been to Houston area. You know all it's the hub of oil and gas activity. Houston, Louisiana belt, and all of that. So Texas A&M, Rice University, those schools are very, very well connected. Macomb similarly is. So Tepper is also in that realm overall. Nice thing is with the 750 at some of these schools, you might get full fellowship.
Okay.
So which is, I think, always a nice thing to have. Yeah. And ultimately, you're concerned about your goal overall. So so that's something that I would really recommend researching schools, not just secondary, but also doing primary research where you talk to people, look at who the professors over there are working with. Okay, which companies, what kind of assignments do they have? What kind of research are they producing at various schools? And how relevant is that research to the kind of things that you want to do? Because when you talk about making contacts, that's kind of how you make contacts.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that I would really recommend. Look at some of the schools which are, I would say, for lack of a better word, in the bed with the industry.
So does it make difference if I don't know, if I go to, let's say tier 1 And these are also tier 1 schools, right?
So remember this, tier 1 and tier 2 in India and tier 1 and tier 2 in US and UK are very different things. Okay. Imperial College, for example, is incredibly hard to get into if you are a British citizen.
Okay.
Okay. The rankings, the way these guys do rank, I mean, don't trust rankings to that extent. Just look at what professors are doing.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you learn from professors. So when you look at a Texas A&M, it's an amazing school. Okay. Now, does McKinsey come and recruit from it? Not really. Do you want to go and work at McKinsey? Not really. So, I mean, so that's something that I would really just say. Tier 2 colleges are schools which are ranked 25th to 50th are really good schools in US. I studied at Babson, and from what I remember, and this is 2004 numbers, the lowest salary that an assistant professor or senior lecturer received from Babson was about $130K. I think is a decent salary.
Yeah.
So the highest from school, and this is without the consulting work that they get from the industry, from what I remember, was an Indian professor who was getting about $500,000. And this is they teach 3 days a week.
Wow.
So,
but how's the job perspective in US? I know there has been a lot of talks about whether it's going to be the same or it's going to get worse or whatnot.
It's, I think, so here is something which is there. So right now there are, so first of all, having full fellowship, if you're worried about jobs, is really amazing, by the way. Right? But essentially, what's happening on the H-1B standpoint is something which is, I think, really good for B school students. Why? Because if you look at the bill that's there in the Senate, it's targeting firms which are called H-1B dependent firms. And H-1B dependent firms are currently classified as firms that have 15% or more of their workforce as H-1Bs. And now, so the bill is doing three things. One is it's increasing that it's redefining that classification and changing that to firms that have 20% or more of their workforce as H-1B dependent. Okay, so there's a slight leniency over there. Number one. Number two, for them, what it's saying is, for these firms, if they have to hire an H-1B person, they have to do two things. One is they have to make sure that they pay this person at least $90,000. The current limit is $60,000.
Yeah.
Second thing is they have to ensure that the person who they're hiring is not displacing an American in the same position. Now, it's only for these firms. It's not for firms who have fewer than 20% of their workforce.
Yeah.
Now, how does that benefit you as an MBA? Because right now, a lot of the H-1B slots are taken by the TCSs and Infosys of the world who pay $60,000. In fact, I wrote an article this February where I've talked about salary charts of two categories of H-1B firms. One is the TCS, the Satyams, the Infosys ones. And you find that 70% of their H-1B is around $62,000. And then you have the other category of H-1B firms, which are Google, Microsoft, Dell, Infosys, EMCs, and VMwares, and all of those guys. Their salary chart, the median over there is about $95,000, $97,000.
Wow.
So those guys are very happy, because what happened today was 70% of the positions are taken at that $62,000. A lot of people who apply at that $100,000 aren't able to do that, because it's a lottery system today.
Yeah.
Once you remove these positions, a lot more people are going to hire higher paying candidates.
Yeah.
So I think so as soon as that bill is passed, I think the cloud is going to go off of H-1B, and I'm hoping that gets passed in the next 6 to 8 months. So I think which is very good.
Yeah. But if let's say if you're unlucky enough and you don't get in lottery, because I have a friend who's been working there for almost 3 years, and 3 times he has been lucky. He had been unlucky. He's from STEM course, so he could stay for 2 years, right? And then he
He can
applied
stay
three
for
times.
3 years post this thing.
Yeah,
Yes.
3 years. I think all the 2 or 3 times he'd been unlucky, and then he started. He's working at the same time he's doing a part-time study or some course just to stay over there.